There we are. Good morning, everyone. This is the King of the Texas Renaissance Festival, and it is my extreme honor to be here with our founder and our first king, George Coulam, who we're going to spend a few moments introducing you to today. Good morning, George. How are you?
Very well, my lord.
Oh, thank you. You do me a great honor. Indeed. I do serve at George's pleasure, and I thank thee. George, let's just start with some of your history. Let's go. You were born May 2nd?
1937 in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Salt Lake City, Utah. My goodness.
Was raised there. Went to high school there.
Your parents were Virgil and Nina?
Yes.
Indeed. And then you were also spent a lot of time with your grandparents, correct? Frank and Ellen?
Yes.
Yeah.
They lived with us.
Oh, excellent. They taught you quite a bit in your youth, I'm sure.
Yeah, my grandpa used to hit me with his cane every time I walked by him.
Oh, well, that taught you not to walk by him, I guess.
Why he did that? He says, just to make sure you're staying in line.
Excellent. Well, did it keep you in line?
Yes, it did.
Perfect. Now, your father your grandfather was a founder of an oil company in Venezuela?
Yes.
What did he do there? How did that become part of his?
Well, he was in a group of people that came down there to discover oil, and they did, and then they sold it to Sinclair.
Now, you began your education, getting your education at the University of California, Northridge?
Yes.
Indeed.
So I moved to Northridge and went to school there. I worked in my brother's gas station to support myself. And I went there for 4 years, got my bachelor's, and then I went another 2 years and got my master's degree in art.
Master's degree in art. That's absolutely amazing. And then that's moved you on to, you decided after you got out of school, after you graduated, you were looking for a job. Is this how it goes?
Yeah, I couldn't get a job after I got out of schools, and I'd been to a Renaissance Festival in San Francisco, and I said, well, I'll try one of those. And so my brother and I started the festival in Salt Lake City, and we ran there 2 years, and then the church kind of invited us to leave because we were using some of the students from BYU, and they were not too happy about that. So we moved on to, I was teaching stained glass at the time, and one of my students was named Rick Class. And he said, well, let's go to Minnesota. And he wanted to be part of the festival. And I said, sure, let's go. And we went to Minnesota. And his father introduced us to Henry McKnight, and he was one of the heirs of 3M. And we had a meeting with him and showed him what we could do. And he says, yeah, let's do it. And he was a big, long table with all attorneys and accountants and everybody. And they just about had a cow. And they said, wait, what if somebody gets killed? And I said, so what? And he said, you go over there and find him some property and find Mr. Coulam. He'll rent one of those houses over there, and we're going to give him the whole thing for $1 a year. And the whole people there sitting at the table just had a cow. But he said that's the way it was going to be. And so that's what we did.
Why do you think he did that for you? What do you think he saw in you?
He saw that it could bring people out to he was building a new community just like the Woodlands. And he wanted to bring people out to see what he was building, and he thought this would be a good way to bring them, and it did. And later on, the marketing director for the new community apologized and said he recognized now it was a good thing. And the only problem was Henry died. And when Henry died, he said, well, his heirs said that was the end of the festival. So we moved to a county just down from there called Shakopee. And Mr. Lester Malkerson, he rented us some property there. And we started doing real good there in his property. And then my brother and I and Jim Aoki decided we were going to start another festival, and we were going to have one in the spring and one in the fall. So we went to Texas. We liked Texas, and we all decided we'd do it there. We each put in $12,500 and three-way partners, and we started Texas. And we were lucky enough to get some property, and we opened up there and did real good. Well, I mean, did real good. We lost all our money.
You lost it all.
Well, we didn't have any more money to keep going, and so we said, well, I have to either save Texas or I have to save Minnesota. And because we had bought the property and we didn't own the property in Minnesota, we decided to go. And so I decided to sell Minnesota for $300,000. I found some buyers, and they were all set to go, except one problem. The lease on the property that we were using, the owners of the lease have to approve the buyer. So we had a big meeting at his house, and I was panicking because we needed to get back there with the money because we were kiting checks. And so we met with these guys, and they said, okay, let's do it. But he had a son who was an attorney named Bruce Markerson, and he says, George, come in the kitchen for a minute. I want to talk to you. And in there, and he told me, look, I think we should get at least $50,000 of your $300,000 that you're going to get. And I didn't answer him. I just went in there and I talked to the father, and I went right up to his face and I says, Mr. Malkerson, you got me for 3 more years, and then I'm going to burn this down.
Oh, no.
So anyway, we jumped in our car, went racing away, and they were following us, and they were beeping their horn, and they said that they would give Malkerson the $50,000.
The people buying
need to make a contract, and I had a plane to catch it at 10 o'clock in the morning, so I says, get everybody together, get the secretaries together, and they went to his office, and we drew up a contract, and we sold the festival to him. I signed the contract. I said, I got to have my money at 7 o'clock in the morning so I can get to the airport to catch the plane at 10 o'clock. So they opened the bank, and they gave me the check, and Mr. Bruce Markerson, the attorney, was there and just killed him because he couldn't get part of the money that we got. Anyway, and then that was the beginning of Texas, and we used that money to save Texas. And Mr. Aroki, we bought him out of the partnership. Then it was just me and David. And then David got married, and then his wife was unhappy, and so then I fired both David and the wife, and
just fired them both.
I fired them both. They didn't want to cooperate, and there we are. And here we are today. Been here 45 years,
right?
Going into 46, and it's been very successful. We bought a lot of property and built a real nice festival.
When you came down here and you got the property, there's an interesting, as you started expanding the fair, there's an interesting story behind how you were able to do it.
Well, once we bought the original 200 acres, which was a strip mine, and we rehabilitated it, and had a little piece of forest right in the middle that was good for the festival. And but we started expanding, and we needed more property for the campground. And so I went to Champion's Paper, and the guy that was running it, the office there for Champion Paper, he said, well, the office just told me we can't buy or sell any more property, but we can trade property. And so he told me if I bought this 200 acres in Liberty County, he would trade me that for the 42 acres I wanted for the new campground. And that's how I got the money, and then we did that a couple of times, and finally we're at 900 acres right now.
900 acres, the total campground and festival site. That's absolutely incredible. So are there any stories you remember from the early days when you were out here and you were setting and moving around the site? I mean, because you helped do the building, you were with all the people.
Yeah, I did everything. I played the king and the queen.
For 5 years?
I led the Grand March. And I was the entertainment director, and I was got Jeff, and he relieved me of that, and he's been there ever since. And I did the construction, but we slowly got in a crew that slowly took over all the different little things that I was running around doing.
Right.
And then I lived in a trailer on the site. I lived there for 10 years. And at the end of 10 years, I got enough money to buy this property, and I started building this.
And this is, you consider this property that we're on right now, in case the listeners and viewers don't know, we're at Stargate Manor, Arboretum.
Stargate Manor is 200 acres. It's across the street from the festival. Right. And then I wanted to build an arboretum and combine art, because now it's getting closer. I could spend a little more time doing my art. And now for the past 5 years, I'm almost doing all just exclusively my art. And I have a 4-man crew that helps me with my art, and I have a 7-man crew that helps me with the garden.
Well, let's talk about that, because you're also very much into horticulture. I know the fair is got many gardens that you've helped design, and
we have the Magic Garden. One year I decided that we had a piece of property that was really had a little creek running through it, and it had a lot of growth and stuff. And we said, well, let's just cut through there and we'll make a Magic Garden, so that the festival will have a garden influence too. And then we put little settings in each one, and venues in each one, and
little thematic temples, to flowers and different sculptures.
Sir Francis, he was a good example. We bought a skeleton and we dressed him all up, and he was one of the saints. And this is one of the things that I learned when I was in Europe about the church. On the altar, they had written the Pope and asked them to send them the bones of a saint. And so we copied that, and we have that in the festival.
Oh, with St. Felix's,
And they can stop at Sir Francis and see him and say their prayers and have their wishes granted.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then they go down a couple more, and then they would meet the fairy godmother, and she would grant small children little wishes and favors.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing. You have that full festival going on, and then you can go and visit the Magic Garden, and it's a very quiet, contemplative place. It's set in a little hollow. It's absolutely beautiful to walk through. You enjoy it quite a bit, I'm sure.
That's what we were striving for, is a place where they could sit and rest, because it's clear at the end of the festival, which is a long walk. And then so they could rest in there, and there's places for them to rest, and then they come back around. Then they finish the tour.
You've got so many stories about the festival. One of the ones that I enjoy hearing you tell is how you ran into a couple on the fair who was wanting, they were having problem. I guess they bought a ring.
They came up to me and they said, Mr. Coulam, my husband and I bought this ring, and we paid $400 for it. And we really couldn't afford it, and we wanted to take it back. And the jeweler wouldn't give us buy it back from us. And we wondered if you could help us. And I said, sure, I can help you. I'll buy it back from you. So I gave them $400, and I took the ring back. And then I went down to the jeweler, and I says, we have a policy here that the customer can bring back anything, anytime, anywhere, for whatever reason, doesn't matter. We automatically give him his money back. And the craftsman said, well, I don't care. I don't have that policy. And I says, I know, but if you want to stay in the festival, you have to have that policy. And he says, well, I don't care. I'm not going to do it. And I went on my radio and I say, Shorty, get the bulldozers and some dump trucks, and we're going to move this guy out of the festival. And of course, the festival was going on, but it was getting later in the evening. And he said, okay. And then pretty soon here come the backhoe and the bulldozer and the dump trucks. And we started putting his stuff in this thing. And the bulldozers were getting ready to tear down his booth. And of course, he came out of the shadows then. He said, oh, wait a minute. I'll buy back the ring. And of course, people talked about him. The other artists and craftsmen realized that they got to abide by the rules, and so they all did. But they thought it was funny that I was going to tear down this guy's booth right in the middle of the festival.
Well, I tell you, I guess if you don't put the festival first and you don't put the patrons first, then you don't need to be out here at the festival. Indeed. Well, that's excellent. There's another story that I've always liked hearing about. And that's the judge that helped you incorporate Malcolm, I believe his name is.
Yeah, he was.
Swank,
he was
Bill Swank.
the judge that ran Grimes County. And Grimes County, when we first got here, and we got our license from them to run, they had a large crowd gathering ordinance. And it said in there that I had to go up and stand in front of the county commissioners and ask permission to open my festival. And so that was kind of annoying, and it's really hard to plan. and to get credit because we had to go apply every year to get our license. And I asked the judge if he could help me figure out some way so I didn't have to do that every year. And he said, sure, I can help you. He says, I want you to incorporate into a city. You make that property down there and drop the boundaries and have a vote and do it. And I said, well, that's a complicated thing. He says, don't worry about it. I'll help you. And he did. He told me exactly everything to do, and I did it exactly what he said. We drew up the boundaries, and we had an election, and most of the people living within those boundaries were part of the Renaissance Festival, and we voted in a city of Todd Mission. And so he helped us do that. And
that was 1982 when it became incorporated, and you've been mayor for 30 years since then.
Been mayor since then.
George, before we go any further, there's still a couple more stories I'm quite interested in about the festival. You've got a million of them, and you're nice to share them. How you came across the joust, and the whole joust began out here with the horse racing and chariots?
I read a history book and was describing what life was like, and the gypsies and the lords and ladies of the realm used to get together each year and trade horses and race horses. And that's kind of the jousting and all that business got in there. And I read this book, and I said, well, we should have that for the festival. We should have it exactly how they had it in the 14th century. And so we took some property, and we built a racetrack, and we built a jousting arena, and we started jousting. And we hired professional jousters from Hollywood to come out and do the jousting, and they weren't very good. And some of the cowboys from Plantersville said they could do it a lot better. And so I fired the professional actors, and we hired the cowboys, and lo and behold, they were better. And they just used to beat the shit out of each other.
Oh,
they had broken arms and broken legs and broken toes and broken hands every weekend. But they put on a great show, and the crowd really loved them. And but we had decided everybody got beat up so bad, we better go back and let the professional guys do it.
And that was the Emhoffs that did that.
That was the Emhoffs.
The cowboy jousters, I think they were affectionately referred to throughout the years. And there was also chariot racing. You incorporated chariot racing into the festival?
We had chariot racing, and that was pretty successful. But then that got a little bit dangerous. And then we started horse racing, and the horse racing got a little out of hand because the owners of the horses were betting big money on the races, and they were putting chemicals in the horses they shouldn't have been. And so we had to stop that.
Indeed. Again, always maintaining the standards of the festival as well, not only for the people, but for the animals as well. Now, there's a lot of things that people do in the world, and one of the things that they don't often do is crash in an airplane. Okay. So you and a friend, Jim Krieger, I believe?
I had a notion that the world was going to go to hell, and I needed to buy an island to go there and be safe when the world went to hell.
An island.
And I said, I went down to where did I go? French Polynesia. And I looked at an island there, and it was really nice. And then I looked at an island just off Belize. And me and Jim Kruger went down there, and we rented a private plane, and we flew around this private island that was for sale, and the plane quit running. And we just went right into but we crashed right next to the island, and so we were able to swim over and get on this island, and nobody was there or anything. And we saw a yacht passing by, and we were waving our shirts and help, help, help. And so they finally came over, and we said, well, we'd crashed our plane, and they had a phone that we could call New Orleans, and then New Orleans could call the place we rented the phone, and then they sent a boat to come and pick us up.
That's absolutely, and you say it so matter-of-factly. Yes, I just crashed the plane. Yeah, there we are. No big deal.
Well, the good part of the story is when we crashed, the pilot jumped out of the plane when he hit the water, and he took the only life jacket. And so me and Jim didn't have any, but I had a cooler with me. And so I grabbed that cooler, and when I jumped out of the plane into the water, I had that cooler, and I used that as a kind of a life preserver.
Float.
And Jim was having a hard time, and so I grabbed his belt and pulled him in, and we swam in and got out of the water.
Absolutely amazing. Did you have time to think anything as the plane was going down?
Just the cooler.
Yeah, just the cooler, indeed. Well, that's absolutely amazing. And I guess after that, you decided the world maybe wasn't going to hell after all.
That was the end of the island.
That was
No more island.
Stick on dry land. Absolutely amazing. Another part of the festival that I enjoyed for many years, you had set up an orchard out here for quite a while.
I bought some extra property from the paper company, and I said, well, now we've got enough property for everything and for the campgrounds and everything. Let's try to use that property as a pick your own orchard. And so I hired a horticulturist, and we put that land and cleaned it all up, and we planted peach trees and nectarines, but our main product was strawberries, and we did pretty good. But now I know why it's hard to be a farmer. And I said, I don't want to be a farmer anymore.
Because you had to irrigate. I mean, that's a lot of resources.
And the campground got bigger and bigger. There was an interesting story about how we started the campground. Uh-huh. Is we had some property at the very back of the parking lot, and people just started pulling their campers and their trailers and their tents and started camping back there. And so I was on my tour one day, and I said, well, look at that. We got campers here. And so then I started counting the number of campers, and I could predict how many people were coming to the festival by how many campers we had in the spontaneous campground. Uh-huh. And then I said, well, let's find them a better place than this. And that's when I got some property, and I said, just make that for the campground. Although it wasn't big enough because it kept growing. And so then we tore down the Pick Your Own Orchard and made that into camping. Now I think we got it finally, famous last words, we got it big enough that the campground will expand in it and use up all the space that we've got for it.
Yeah, you've spent the last 2 years completely renovating the fields of Newmarket, the campground that we have out there.
We took out the Pick Your Own Orchard, and we just groomed everything in and planted trees and sculpted everything and put in. And then we put in a more complete area where they could do the trailers and the fancy RVs. And
yeah,
that's one of the things about the campground. They just started that spontaneous by themselves, and they have a whole entertainment thing there, and that happens every Saturday and every Friday night. They have a big party, and they have music groups, and they big bonfire, and they dance around the bonfire and play music.
Yeah, it's a
spontaneous thing with no planning or anything.
Right.
It just happened.
And people love it, and they've loved all the changes you've made out there. In fact, throughout the years, you've gained such a fan base that they call themselves clans and groups and crews. They come out every year to visit, and you met with a lot of them last year.
Some of the people that come every year, and they come every weekend, they park their campers, and they bring their campers 2 weeks in advance, and they camp, and then they commute in from the city and different places, and they come every weekend.
Yeah, absolutely, and have been doing it for quite a while now.
Forming of clans is some of the people got together and they formed clans, and they put up tape around and say, this camping area right here is reserved for a certain clan, and then that's their territory.
Right, excellent. So let's transition, I guess, from orchard and camping, and let's start talking a little bit more about Todd Mission, which you've been mayor of for 30 years.
Okay, one of my goals was to get the festival where I was earning enough money that I could do my art and that I could build an arboretum.
Right.
I copied the one that was in California called the Huntington Museum. And that was my inspiration. And they had palms, and we got into palms, and then we got into lotus, and now that's the two biggest things we have are our lotus collection and our palm collection. And our bogs and lake.
And you've been working with Shane Roop on developing all those?
He's the horticulturist, and he manages all that.
Excellent. And that's all right here at the Stargate Manor Arboretum, which is your legacy. Now, you started building, how long have you been working on the Arboretum? Since you began the house, yeah?
30 years.
30 years. And your inspiration for the house was the Spanish architect Gaudi?
Yeah, when I was going to school, we studied the architect Anton Gaudi. He was a leading exponent of Art Nouveau. And his one big building was he built Sagrada Familia, which is in Barcelona, and now it's one of the biggest tourist attractions in Spain.
Indeed, a huge, and you based your whole house upon his...
Basically copied his theories, but not the shapes, and that's how I built the house, called organic architecture. So there's no posted lintels. It's all cement. It's like if you were peeling a skin off of an orange. That's this kind of architecture right here.
Oh, so, okay, because it's all stacked and cut stone.
It's all rounds and cement.
Right. Where did you get all the stone for this from?
Got that in Philadelphia. It's called Spring Green.
Spring Green. And so you had to have it all the way shipped down to here. That must have been quite...
Can't find enough stones in Texas. I had to pick it should come from Philadelphia. But you have to break the rocks, and then they form like a V, and it's called lost mortar technique. And that's how we made the walls.
And you actually helped split the rock and helped stack them, and you did all the work yourself.
We laid all the rock.
Indeed. And then from that, you started developing the Arboretum improper, the pathways, and the...
After I built my house, then we started building it's a 200-acre Arboretum.
200 acres. And
it'll be a museum when I die.
Oh. So throughout the Arboretum, you have sculptures that you've built, and some of them you've acquired from other artists from around the world, and it's a very eclectic collection. What do you have? What do you think about that when you?
Well, one of my goals was to combine Mother Nature and art, and so to make that into one statement, so that the sculptures and the architecture and all the arts look like they've naturally been there and grown up with the trees and the flowers, and so it's all just really fits naturally in. And the goal is to make a really awe-inspiring experience for the people that come in and see it.
Right. Which takes a lot of advanced planning, because you got to know the plants and how you want them to grow, and then you set out. Let's talk about the chapel you built.
Well, I was copying again Gaudi, only he built a great, huge cathedral.
Right.
And mine's a cathedral too, but it's just a really a small church where I can go say my prayers in the morning.
Right. Is it your little contemplative area? I notice you've got a lot of areas you set up to inspire. You have a sculpture garden there with quotes,
That's the meditation grotto.
Meditation grotto.
And across from that is I've prepared for my death, and I have a temple there and my own sarcophagi, and it's all waiting for me to go, and I'm ready to go.
You're ready to go.
I'm ready to go when I die.
Oh, there you go. Fair enough. So, what are some of the legacies? You talked about creating this arboretum that people are going to be able to visit and contemplate. You've talked about art and nature together. Is there anything else that you want to do to continue on to that, or to build up?
I tell you about 7 years ago. They diagnosed me with Alzheimer's, and they said, you're going to die in about 4 years. And so that was not, really an upsetting experience.
Yeah,
so I said, well, I better go visit the nursing homes and see where I can be when I'm starting to go. And I went to a nursing home in Tomball, and it was a horrifying experience. And was all these older people just sitting in there, vegetating and dying. And I drove out of there, and on my way out of there, I said, I'll be God if I'm going to go out like that. And so I decided I was going to cure myself of Alzheimer's. That was about 25 years ago, and so I'm still here. They said I was going to die in 4 years, and I thought I should share my experience with that. And so I wrote a book of how I cured myself of Alzheimer's.
Mind Wars.
Yes.
Indeed.
And
that was a pretty interesting experience. You worked with a writer on that, and
I just kind of shut down everything. I quit working. I quit my art. I quit everything. And I read books on neurology and studied all the things about how do you kill the plaque and tau. That's what causes the thing. And there's a little disease that's up in your brain, and it clogs up your neural channels, and it kills your neurons. And so I said, the way to cure yourself is to make my brain make more neurons, called neurogenesis.
Right.
And so every morning I meditate and I ask my brain to make more neurons. Then I ask my other system to kill the plaque and tau, and kind of self-meditation and self-hypnosis. And
you've been following this since...
And then the other part is to have a really good diet. And it was sugar and a lot of things I was eating that was causing part of my Alzheimer's. And so I adopted a vegetarian diet, very strict diet, and that's how I helped myself. That's how I cured my,
So a 4-year diagnosis, and you've gone 12 years beyond it?
Yeah.
Pretty incredible. One of the standout things about the Texas Renaissance Festival is that you're always improving and adding to the infrastructure and making the patrons' experience more enjoyable, more comfortable. And I just would like you to talk a little bit about that, how you consult surveys and how you make your decisions to fix.
Okay, one of the things we do is we have a survey, and as the patron is coming out, the exit, we take a survey, and then at the end of the festival, I get everybody around, and we look at the survey, and it says, ask the people how we can improve. And one of the ones every year is they don't like the porta potties, and so the experience I had with the porta potties was not good anyway, because the people would come and the people, they wouldn't understand how to come out, and so I appointed privy counselors. These people, their job was just to open the doors for the people and say, good day, my lord, right here, my lady, right. And they would direct the people right to where they had to go.
To the porta potties.
To the porta potties. And they would open the doors for them. My lord, step forward.
A literal
These are called
privy counselors.
Privy counselors, and we still have privy counselors to this day. Now, the next thing they wanted is they wanted us to get rid of the porta potties because they didn't smell good. And so after the 4th year, I just said, that's it. We're going to build a sewer system, and we're going to have flush toilets for everybody. And I didn't realize how much it would cost, and I didn't realize what it would take. And so I hired the engineers, and they designed a sewer system for a city of 40,000 people. I thought they were being a little excessive there, but thank God they did that, because they knew better than I did. And so I took my construction crew, and we went by what the engineer said, and we built us a sewer plant, and we built us all the plumbing that goes around and flushes all the toilets. And to this day, we have, a lot of flushing toilets. And that's one of the things that people like, and they commented now they have a really nice place to go to the bathroom. But you have no idea how much money that costs. It's about $20 million. And so that's very expensive to make everybody happy. But hey, they like it. And Walt Disney told me to do that. He says, you must have a really nice, clean, functioning place for people to go to the bathroom.
And Walt Disney.
Privy counselors in there. And if they can't find a place, the privy counselor says, right here, my lady. And they open the door for the lady. and if they start to get a little bit of line sometimes, then they organize it and say, you come over here and you go over here. And then as we didn't build them big enough to begin with, so we kept adding the ends. And fortunately, we put enough property in back, we could keep adding and making them bigger. And I think we added to them 7 times.
To the privies.
We got it to where they were enough. But...
So it's a learn as you go process a lot of times.
Thing.
Indeed. We also wanted to talk about your legacy and how you'd like to conclude this interview. Or if I missed anything, what would you like to? All the people that are listening to you right now, they want to, hear from you because millions of people have been affected by your business and what you've done.
What I wanted to do is I wanted to build a place that would give me enough money that I could do the art that I wanted to do. And my art is I make altars and churches and regalia. And that's what I do. And so then I got that enough money and I would be able to build some nice studios and hire some people that we just do art and build churches.
Right.
And that was my benefit from doing the festival. And I read Disney's book and I pretty much did what he said to do and just build a really nice, fun place. And I'd taken some drama classes and was in some plays and when I was in school, so I had a little experience there. And but really, we tried to just make it just like it was in the 15th century. And so when a person walks in, they experience that this is happening just for you for the first time.
Absolutely, and people have been enjoying it for 46 years. I love the fact that your patrons come here and they experience, not only do they experience the Renaissance, because we feel the Texas Renaissance Festival is an artwork in itself. I mean, it's a gem in your crown for certain. But all the patrons seem to take ownership. They feel like it's their festival.
Yes, they do.
And because when people talk about it, and that must feel very special to you to know that they've come out here time and again with their families, and it's their festival, and they look to you to guide them every year through it. And that's an amazing thing.
Yeah, that's a very good feeling.
It is. Well, we thank you for it, George. Lords and ladies, we appreciate you being here with our interview with our first founder and king, George Coulam. I serve under his pleasure, and I certainly thank you for letting me interview you today. There we are. Huzzah!
Huzzah!
Here, join me, everyone. Hip, hip.
All right.
Huzzah!